Hello, Chef Marcus Guiliano here. I'm your chef on a mission. Today's mission is more salmon, as Martha Stewart and Rick Moonen and some other well-known chefs and figures keep promoting farmed salmon as a viable option. Of course, the companies themselves promote it as a very, very viable option. Let's read some latest news here. February 4th, 2018. This again is about Cooke Aquaculture. Cooke Aquaculture has farms all over the world. They're predominantly known, chefs really like them, like Rick Moonen and Martha Stewart, for their label True North Salmon. True North Salmon, which comes out of the eastern side of the eastern side of Canada. Chefs like Rick Moonen and celebrities like Martha Stewart get duped into supporting feedlot pen salmon, which is the way most companies raise salmon, is very detrimental to the environment, very detrimental for the health of the fish, for our health, there's so many different things wrong with farmed salmon. You can check out more of that by going to nofarmedsalmon.com. Rick Moonen, if you're watching this, please go check out that website. But I'm sure you don't want to hear that kind of stuff because you're in it probably too deep right now with True North. Martha Stewart just posted something on their blog, but Rick Moonen's been out there promoting the stuff for a couple of years. But he's probably, like I said, in too deep right now. So, Washington State. Yes, Cooke Aquaculture has farms in Washington State as well. And here it is. Washington State cancels lease for Cooke Aquaculture Atlantic salmon farms near Cypress Island. Now, if you've been keeping up with it all, the indigenous nations, the First Nations of Canada on the West Coast, have issued formal evictions for all of the salmon farms over in that area. See, the indigenous, the natives there, the First Nations, as you call them, have rights, and a business, when they operate there, has to have approval from the First Nations. Some of the companies out there have not gotten approval from the First Nations. Some of them have, but the First Nations have basically said, hey, these salmon farms are destroying our livelihood, our environment, the wildlife, everything around us is being destroyed by these salmon farms spewing out this disease, killing off the wild salmon, which then is a food source for orca whales. It's almost 70% of orca whales, females pregnant, do not carry full term because they don't have enough food in the ocean. And yet Martha and Rick just keep promoting this stuff, and all these other chefs keep promoting farmed salmon as a viable option. So let's jump into this article. Commissioner of Public Lands Hilary Franz has terminated Cooke Aquaculture's lease to operate Atlantic salmon farms at its Cypress Island site, where the second fish farm is at risk of catastrophic collapse, state inspectors said. And this is from the Seattle Times, by the way. In a letter to Cooke managers sent Saturday, Franz said that the lease is terminated immediately and the company should wind up its operations and clear out of the site in the San Juan Islands, where one of the three pens fell apart last August, releasing more than 260,000 farmed Atlantic salmon into Puget Sound. The termination comes just days after the state investigators released a report blaming the net pen failure on the company's negligence. Now, if you go on Martha Stewart's blog, she posts pictures how Cooke Aquaculture at the True North, for the True North brand, which is really no specific farm site. I think it's a mixture of some of their higher quality, better fishes that go into the program. So she made a comment how sturdy the nets are and how sturdy the operation is. And that's like something that, like, why would somebody just say that posting a blog? That's because the PR people from Cooke Aquaculture wanted her to say that, because this is one of the downfalls of salmon farming. They can't withstand storms in the bays, and then of course they spread a lot more, like wild salmon, farm salmon get released into the ocean there and compete for the same food source as the wild salmon, and then of course carry the diseases even farther away from the farm site. So that was something that I'm pretty sure that the Cooke PR team wanted Martha to really get a point across on her blog, how sturdy they are. And here you see the farms are not sturdy. The termination comes just days after the state investigation released a report blaming the net pen on company negligence. The investors also said that the company misled the public and regulators about the scope and cause of the collapse. Gee. A little bit of lying in there, Cooke Aquaculture? Probably. It is the second time in 3 months France has acted to end Cooke's leases. The company lost its lease for Port Angeles in December and now has only 4 of its original 9 sites in Washington state available for operation. That's the good news. 4 out of 9. Got 5 down, 4 to go. 2 of the terminations cancel about 42% of the company's productivity of Atlantic salmon in Puget Sound. That's great news. 40% down. According to the State Department of Natural Resources, its remaining locations are in Rich Passage and near Anacortes at Hope Island. The reason for the most recent lease terminations are inadequate maintenance of the pens and the company's invalid use of the lease. If you go on to Stormcloud's YouTube, Stormcloud is a popular term when you put it into YouTube, but put Stormcloud Salmon, Stormcloud True North, Stormcloud Cooke, Cooke, you will see they're filming stuff where Cooke Aquaculture is in violation there. They're over the boundary lines. They're in violations of their leases. They have them. They're lying about where their nets and stuff are past. So pretty interesting. So this is not a new practice for Cooke Aquaculture to actually lie about it. Now Rick Moonen and Martha Stewart, they're basically saying that, hey, Cooke is a family-owned company, independent company. They might be family-owned. Bacardi's family-owned. There's a lot of companies that are family-owned that are still very scandalous. Corruption is involved in them. So just because it's a family-owned company doesn't really mean that they're doing the right thing. Cooke has flagrantly violated the terms of its leases at Cypress Island, Franz said. The company's reckless disregard endangered the health of our waters and our people and will not be tolerated. Good job, Washington State. On the behalf of all Washingtonians, and in the fulfillment of my duty to protect our state's waters, I am terminating the lease. Joel Richardson, Vice President of Public Relations for Cooke, said in a Saturday email to the Seattle Times that the company has just learned of the termination. We will reserve comment until we have had proper time to review the letter and assess the impact on our operations and our employees' livelihood, Richardson said. 3 sites affected. The termination affects all 3 of Cooke's sites at Cypress Island, which operate under one lease. Site 2, where the pen failed last August, was destroyed and has been removed. Sites 1 and 3 are now empty of fish after the harvest last month, but they were unable to be restocked. Cooke has installed 2 improvements, a feed barge facility and an office platform with the advance permission from the Department of Natural Resources and without required performance bond according to the termination letter. Cooke also failed to maintain the net pen at Site 1. According to the letter, a department inspector found that the facility is in poor condition, likely past the end of its service life, and is in danger of catastrophic failure, according to the letter. The lease requires the pens and mooring be maintained in good order and repair in a clean, attractive, and safe condition. So the article goes on a little more with their Port Angeles operation. So Cooke Aquaculture is being told to get out of Washington State in most of their operation. They're going to be down 42%. That's fantastic news for the wild salmon in that area. The wild salmon desperately need the salmon farms to disappear. There is no place across the world where wild salmon actually thrives next to farmed salmon. It just doesn't happen. The reason, look at this scenario. The salmon farms have been happening in the Atlantic waters, started in Norway in the 60s, and have moved into Canada, and moved into Scotland, into Maine. There is nowhere in that part of the world, and any other part of the world for that matter, British Columbia as well, where the salmon population is coming back. The salmon population keeps diminishing. And this has been known for years. When I read one of John Robbins' books in 1999 or 2000, which is almost 20 years ago, he was listing the numbers there down from the last decade, from the 80s into the 90s, how the farmed wild salmon is being depleted, and we're not fishing it commercially. We've stopped fishing it commercially, and it's being depleted. Now, there's other success stories where fish actually come back, like the wild striped bass was decimated in the 70s, And of course, that fish has come back, but there's no bass farms out in the ocean. We do freshwater bass or hybrid striped bass, but there's no bass farms out in the ocean to spread out the disease and spew into the wild population. We stopped fishing it, and then all of a sudden, a decade later, 2 decades later, the fish is thriving again, or maybe not be super thriving, but it actually can be allowed to be sport fish and sold at restaurants. Wild salmon from the Atlantic here that is sport caught is not allowed to be served in restaurants. It is still considered a highly troubled species. There is some wild stuff out there, but very little of it out there. In Maine, instead, they still monitor the salmon as they swim up the river, and they can literally count, how many salmon are going up the river to spawn. It's not much at all. So if you're an environmentalist, if you care about what you eat, if you care about the environment, if you care about our food supply, avoiding feedlot penned farmed salmon would be probably on the top of your list. Very detrimental to the environment, like I said, across the board. They pull, as Alex Morton said, the marine biologist, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. You have to start by depleting wild fish in the ocean, drastically depleting wild fish in the ocean to make pellets to then feed to this farm salmon. And some people are going to say, well, Cooke Aquaculture or True North doesn't really use, they use heads and tails from other fish. There's still a lot of funky stuff that goes into the food, no matter what these companies say, and they're never willing to reveal what's exactly in those pellets that the salmon are getting fed. So it's all just what they're saying. It's like McDonald's saying, well, 100% beef goes into our beef. And I heard that McDonald's buys their beef from a company called 100% Beef, right? So it's very manipulative. Well, 100% beef, real beef, pure beef goes into hot dogs. Well, yeah, the 20% of beef that goes into hot dogs might be pure beef, but the other 80% of the stuff is fillers and junk. Probably the same thing with the salmon pellets, as I can assume. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. Thanks for watching. A little bit longer than I wanted to go, but there's just so much information, and this information has to get out there. Spread this word. Tell these chefs, when you go to a restaurant, tell them to stop supporting feedlot salmon, no matter where it's from, no matter if it's from Norway, the Faroe Islands, Scotland, Maine, Canada, East, West Coast, New Zealand. Avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. Tell the chefs you don't want it.